coil itself is housed in this box, okay? So if we were to take this box off, it would give you a better view of what the coil is, but it doesn't really show you the complete assembly. Hey, listen, Patrick Summers, President, CEO, General Air Conditioning and Plumbing. I want to talk to you today about evaporator coils. Now, evaporator coils, a lot of people aren't familiar with them, a lot of homeowners. We all are familiar with the condenser, the outdoor unit that we see that's outside of our home that turns on and blows air up out of it. The evaporator coil, this big box right here, this is the indoor component to your air conditioning system. There's two parts. You've got the outdoor unit, the condenser, that also houses the compressor, the part, or the pump, the heart of the unit. And then you've got this indoor unit. So your indoor unit is going to sit on top of your furnace or air handler, or in some configurations below it. You're going to find this component either in a basement, an attic, a garage, an indoor or outdoor utility or mechanical closet. Depending on the style of your home, where you live in the country, you know, here Southern California, Florida, a lot of times this is going to be in the attic, maybe suspended above the ceiling in a garage or something like that. Other places, the Midwest, Northeast, basements, a lot of times you're going to find these in the basements, okay? Again, it's not going to be by itself. It's going to be connected to an air handler or a furnace. I won't go into a lot of detail, but the air handlers they're integrated as opposed to being separate components. But for the purpose today, let's just focus on this evaporator coil. Now, this evaporator coil, the coil itself is housed in this box, okay? So if we were to take this box off, it would give you a better view of what the coil is, but it doesn't really show you the complete assembly. So I'm going to do my best to walk through some key components here and what you as a homeowner want to be aware of and be familiar with, especially if you're not having your system cool properly or even heat properly, if you're getting certain recommendations from a technician on how to improve its performance, and the things you need to do as a homeowner to make sure this is protected and works long and efficient, and the consequences of not doing that. So first and foremost, this is the inside of this coil, okay? The air goes this way. Now this coil, as you can see, it's a V shape, okay? It runs up here, and you have these aluminum fins, much like the radiator in a vehicle. And running in between these are these copper tubes, all right? The coil sits in this. This is a plastic composite. Some older systems, it may be metal, but these are usually some sort of non-corrosive composite material nowadays. The coil sits in here. Why? Your system produces condensate, all right? So when you're cooling a house, just like the condensate that forms on a glass, you take a cold glass, put it in a warm environment, you're going to get condensate, it's going to run the bar or the counter or whatever is going to get all wet. Same thing happens with the air conditioning system in your home. This is going to produce condensate when it's pulling the heat out of the air. That condensate is going to go into this tray. And then that tray has connections, two connections, right? And this is where PVC piping connects to these. And this is how the water flows out of your system. Why does it have two? Well, there's a primary and a secondary line, okay? Primary here, down low, that's where the condensate's gonna channel out of. It's specially designed in here, really hard to see, unless I put a camera inside here, how the water runs into a little channel and then channels to this, all right? This is the secondary. This is gonna be piped out of the home as well in most cases. Sometimes in a garage, there's just a safety switch on here that shuts the system down if it detects moisture. However, for this purpose, we're going to talk about it being piped out. This one's going to be piped outside the house. This one you're usually going to find over a window. So if it starts flowing, you see it. Attention is called to it. This one's going to be piped out of the house to the ground. May not even notice it unless you have water pooling or flowing somewhere. Interesting story, my home, the primary comes right out of the foundation at the base and drips. And we have a tree, a palm tree now that's probably 15 feet tall that we did not plant there. A seed or a branch or something, I'm not a horticulturist, blew there, took root there, and it's been watered all these years, and it's just grown. So the water does come out of this one. It should come out of this one. If it starts coming out of this one, typically means this one is clogged. That's a problem. All right. So in a good maintenance, if you have your system maintained twice a year, ideally, and you can watch another video as to why I say twice a year, although it can all be done at one time, this is one of the reasons. 2 times a year, this will get checked and blown out with high pressure nitrogen to make sure it's clear. And the water should be run through it to make sure that it's coming out properly. Why? I'll go into that detail a bit later. But these two are very important. Now this secondary, you want a safety switch ideally on it. Safety switch, what does that do? If this starts filling with water, okay, it's running out of the house as it should through the secondary, but if the secondary starts filling up, it's going to raise a float and it's going to shut your system down. If it's wired correctly, the fan will still move to circulate air, but the air conditioning unit, the outdoor unit, will shut down and this will stop making condensation. Okay, so some real key components and parts that should be done on a maintenance and you should have installed on your system. If you don't have a safety switch on your system and a technician recommends it, I would go with that recommendation, all right? Because if this secondary gets back up, if your primary gets back up, your secondary gets backed up, then we're back to this, right? This is only about 2 inches. It will start overflowing out of here. And if you have this in your attic, your ceiling's going to come down, okay? So definitely a good recommendation. So this is the other side of the coil, and you can see these U-bends. This is the copper tubing refrigerant runs through. Your system has, right here, this is a TXV, thermal expansion valve. A TXV, think of it like the fuel injection in your car. This is going to be regulated by this piece here, which is usually clamped to the refrigerant line, all right? This is a sensing bulb. There's refrigerant in this sensing bulb. And what this does is this tells the TXV how much to open or close based on the superheat in the system. So you come home at the end of the day, it's hot in the house, you turn your air on, you drop it 10 degrees, you want it to cool. Man, this thing's gonna open up and just start pushing refrigerant into your coil. As the demand lessens, this will start to close and less refrigerant gets pushed in. The refrigerant, these are called capillary tubes. The refrigerant comes in here through what we call a liquid line into your TXV or thermal expansion valve, and then is distributed into each of these areas. And then it runs through. It goes down to one end, to the other end, all the way through this coil, which again is like the radiator in a car. And what it's doing and how air conditioning works is it's absorbing the heat. Hot goes to cold. One of the laws of thermodynamics is hot or heat goes to cold, okay? So the heat is being absorbed by the refrigerant. This is where the science of cooling comes in. A lot of time, before I got in the industry, I used to think, how does the cold air get in my house? Like, where's it coming from? How does it work? Well, that unit outside is pushing refrigerant that's coming in as a liquid, being pushed into this coil. This coil is absorbing the heat like a sponge, but instead of absorbing water, it's absorbing heat. And then it's coming out of this line, right? And it's going back to the compressor. Then the compressor is basically dissipating that heat to the outside. That's why if you stick your hand over the top of your condenser, the air that's blowing up outside is warm. That's the heat that's being ejected from your home. So this is really important. A TXV gets clogged, gets fouled, it's going to affect the amount of refrigerant that can go into your system. That's going to affect the cooling ability. So if you're diagnosed with a bad TXV, it happens. It happens. This refrigerant system has to be treated like the human body in the sense that if it's ever opened for repair or anything like that, it has to be a sterile environment. There's certain things that have to be done properly to keep this pure. And anytime your system refrigerant cycle is opened, there needs to be a refrigerant dryer installed at the time of the repair. That refrigerant dryer is like a filter that's going to help pull anything out of the refrigerant as it circulates that could harm the system. So really important, this coil really, truly has to be maintained. This, of course, this has to be attached correctly. With your HVAC company knows how to do that. They should anyways. Another thing, here's where the air comes up, passes through, and then comes out this side, right? So hot air comes in, it gives up its heat to the refrigerant, cold air out, okay? Now, this, if you can see, the air is coming from your home through here. So this is where filtration is so important. You have to have good filtration. A 1-inch pleated filter is not good filtration. It's okay. It basically helps protect this, but it doesn't do the best job, all right? You're gonna get a lot of small dust particles, skin, those type of things that will get through here and that will build up on the inside of this. Now, a technician can measure static pressure. That's and measure a difference from one side of this coil to the other to determine if there's any type of obstruction. But they can also usually do a visual check as well on a good maintenance or service call. So if there's a recommendation to clean this coil, they should be able to show you pictures or at least present the readings that show there's an issue. There's a couple ways you can clean this coil. You can clean it in place. Depending on your configuration and the accessibility, you can spray a coil cleaner on here and it basically starts to, the condensate will wash it away and everything will wash away. If it's really bad, you may have to actually cut this out, pull this out, and they have to clean it and then reinstall it. Much more involved, obviously more expensive, and obviously the best thing you can do is prevent that from happening. You've got kids, you've got pets, change your filter more often, upgrade your filtration. Not only does it protect you in the home, your lungs, it really helps protect this. Super, super important for long life. If this starts to get clogged up and coated, you cut the capacity of your cooling down tremendously. So it has to run longer and work harder to cool your home. The other thing is if your refrigerant is low and there's less refrigerant going in here, there's less refrigerant to absorb the heat, same thing. Now, something really important I want to leave you with. If you have to add refrigerant to your system, now sometimes there could be a small adjustment because over the years of doing maintenance, there's a small amount of refrigerant that gets released or lost from the system just by putting gauges on and off. Think of putting a thing on to fill your tire with air or to check the pressure and you hear that little psh, that's a little bit, a tiny release. So if there's a small adjustment that has to be made, could be it was never adjusted properly at the time of install, could be that you had a small amount of loss, and a small amount of refrigerant loss can have a big impact on high demand days, those hot days. Now, if you have to put it in refrigerant regularly, if it's a once a year thing, or every couple of years, or every couple of months, or you have to put in a significant amount, then here's what's really important. You have to check for a leak, because this, like your body, if you have to get blood regularly, where's it going? Where's it going? There's an issue. So you should not have to add refrigerant to the system once it's up and running, except for maybe small adjustments. Anything else, you have to find the leak. It's not a normal thing to do that. So this is again, this is the evaporator coil. This is the second part of your air conditioning system, the part that many people don't talk about, don't know about, because you don't see it. So really important to do regular maintenance, keep that coil clean, prevent any of the problems that can cause your system to shorten its lifespan, work harder, cost you more money, and cut down on your comfort tremendously.